Good evening, Bo Justice. Here in Florida, we are considered the warmest state in the U.S., and Texas ranks at number 4. But we all just witnessed the unprecedented events that took place in Texas just 3 weeks ago. Temperatures below freezing, people without water and electricity, and homeless individuals were found frozen to death on the streets. Let me say that again. People were found frozen to death on the streets in the fourth warmest state in our country. And that just emphasizes that people should not be homeless. The problem of homelessness is not an isolated issue. And in Broward, homelessness is not just an issue, it's a crisis that many of us encounter on a daily basis because it's impossible to ignore. In 2020, Broward homeless population was 2,221, with nearly 1,000 people on our streets with nowhere to go during the pandemic. And the reality is that 90% are receptive to help. On top of that, 611 of these individuals have a severe mental illness. Our county has a list of 192 chronically homeless individuals right now that could be located and put into permanent supporting housing. And these are all pre-COVID numbers. In just 5 days, the county will go out and conduct a census of all the sheltered and unsheltered homeless individuals. And with the loss of jobs, evictions, and the increase in mental illness, our homeless population could potentially spike even more. Which is why I'm thankful that we have remained steadfast in our fight for 200 units of additional permanent supportive housing for homeless individuals suffering from mental illness. We didn't stop this important fight when the pandemic started because our cities and counties didn't stop making decisions. Government spending didn't stop. And most importantly, the suffering of our homeless and mentally ill brothers and sisters did not stop. We've been meeting with proposal sponsor and other county staff monthly, and through continued conversations and strategy, we were presented with a revised plan for 50 units a year, which would get us to 200 units in 4 years. Prior to the pandemic, the county was increasing supportive housing by 30 units a year, so going to 50 will be an increase. However, our goal is to get all the units into work within 3 years because we need care, not crisis, and we need it now. So now we will hear from 3 members in different cities in our county to share just how pressing this issue is.
Good evening, Bold Justice. I'm a member of the Iliopha Seventh-day Adventist Church in Tamarack and a resident of Coral Springs. And when we talk about standing up for our homeless brothers and sisters, this hits home for me because my older brother is homeless and is currently living in a hotel room that I help him from time to time. A few months ago, my brother discovered his dead wife's body after she overdosed on drugs. My brother literally tried to bring her back to life and he failed. He had a mental breakdown and was Baker acted. Due to a stroke, he was in a coma for 5 days. And during that time, he wasn't obviously able to work, so he lost his job. After getting discharged from the hospital, he eventually ended up on the streets because he had no money. He started living in an abandoned warehouse in Fort Lauderdale. I wasn't able to find him for about 3 to 4 months. But then when I found out that he was panhandling just 9 minutes from my job, that day I immediately went to find him after work, and there he was on the side of the road. I was heartbroken. Since then, I have continually provided him with aid, but my brother needs real intervention, not only housing, but support to help him overcome his addiction, as well as the onset of mental health issues.
Just like you, Yolanda, the issue of homelessness hits too close for comfort. I'm a pastor at the Sanctuary Church here in Fort Lauderdale, and homelessness honestly can affect anyone. And over the years, I've heard many stories of how people ended up on the street. The one that kind of currently sticks in my head is this one about a man named Doug. And Doug, for many years, he had a good life. But then his daughter was killed by a drunk driver. And soon after that, his mother died suddenly, unexpectedly. And then things just got worse. A few months later, his business partner and his friend committed suicide right in front of him. And all this loss, this chaos, caused him to fall into this deep downward spiral. And he lost everything. And over the years, he has not been able to get back off the street. And so when I recently asked him, I said, Doug, what would it mean to you to have housing? He looked at me and he said, it would give me dignity, self-respect. I could also have the ability to get a job.
In all honesty, I used to hear stories about people like Doug and feel sympathy, but think that something like that could never happen in my family. But I was wrong. Good evening. I'm a resident of Cooper City, Florida. For years, my brother had been estranged from my family. We didn't know his whereabouts or his status, whether he was dead or alive. But last year, when the pandemic started, I heard from him for the first time in about 25 years. He was malnourished, he was in poor health, and he was homeless on the streets in Fort Lauderdale with nowhere to go. I was faced with a decision, and the decision to leave him on the streets was simply not an option. I chose to care for him. During this time, I began to investigate social services, and the amount of energy required in this process is difficult for anyone, let alone someone who has a mental or a physical limitation. Everything led to a dead end. Finally, it was through a personal contact that I found out about group homes and was able to place my brother into one. Based on my experience, I now know you can't just put someone who is homeless with a mental illness out on their own and expect them to thrive. A lengthy rehabilitation with adequate supportive services is required to put most of these individuals on the road to independence. And in time, they can get there with the proper support, which is why we need care,
not crisis.